The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hey everybody, welcome to today's webinar. We're going to get started shortly. I want to give some of the newcomers a chance to jump on and join us. Thanks to all of you for being on time. We're probably going to get started here at around 2:03, so we'll be back with you then. I just, again, want to let some people jump on, so sit tight. All right. Good morning and good afternoon. Most of you are probably on the West Coast, so good afternoon to you guys and Happy New Year. It's hard to believe it's already 2019. Welcome to today's webinar where we're going to be breaking down Southern California Edison's new rates and their impact on solar and energy storage projects. My name's Tracy and I'm our marketing manager here at Energy Toolbase. We've got some other really great panelists on today, including one of our most senior utility rate analysts, Aaron Christensen, as well as our executive vice president, Scott D'Ambrosio. And at the end, our COO, Adam Gurza, he's a regular on these. He's going to be jumping on as well. A few quick housekeeping items to go over just before we get started. Everybody who registered for this webinar is going to receive an email afterwards with the recording of it, no matter if you attended or not. Pass it on to whoever you need to. All of our recordings are also going to be on our YouTube and our Vimeo pages. Throughout this presentation, if you have any questions, please feel free to chat them into the chat box at the bottom, and we're going to get to as many as we can at the end of the webinar. We're also going to be responding to any questions that we don't get to via email. We don't want to you guys to think that we're ignoring your questions, but ones regarding how a certain rate's going to affect your project won't be answered during the webinar for time's sake. Additionally, if you think of anything after the webinar that you have questions on, please feel free to reach out to your account manager or myself, and we can clear any remaining questions you have. All right, here's a look at today's agenda. We have so much to go over. We're going to start with the timeline of these final decision rates to kind of set the stage, when they'll become voluntary and mandatory. Next, we're going to have Aaron step in and cover the basic characteristics, the big picture of these rates, including the new TOU periods, grandfathering, and some of the key characteristics and changes that she's noticed within these new rates. Following Aaron, again, we'll have Scott, who's going to be demoing a few real-world examples of the effects these rates are going to have on projects and how to properly utilize Energy Toolbase to analyze these changes. And again, as always, we'll finish with Q&A. So for those of you who aren't currently Energy Toolbase users, a lot of you that registered are, but we are a SaaS software platform and we specialize in the economic, avoided cost, and utility rate analysis of solar plus storage projects. We're all about accuracy and transparency, and one thing that we do that nobody else does is we have our own in-house utility rates team. They're the gold mine and the backbone of what we do here. They create and maintain rates in our global database every day. Right now, we have more than 38,000 rates in our platform, and our team knows them inside out. They're experts, and that's why we bring them on these webinars for you guys. There's not really another tool out there that does this for you. They're an amazing resource, and when it comes to these ever-changing rates, their knowledge really is unmatched. All right, so let's dive into the timeline of these rates really quickly. SCE's new final decision rates, they're becoming voluntary in March of this year. That's less than 3 months away, so the clock's really ticking to start really understanding and comprehending these rates. As a quick refresher of how these rates came to be, a lot of you know this, but every 3 years, the three major IOUs, SCE, PG&E, and SDG&E, all go through the general rate case cycles, which are proceedings to address the cost of operating and maintaining the grid, and it forms the basis for customer rates within that territory. So all three utilities go through this cycle. The decision came in July of 2018 on the later TOU periods, and the final rate design was decided upon just last month in December. As far as the implementation and timing of these rates, again, they're going to go into effect and become voluntary in March of 2019. And then in October of 2020, the residential rates will default to that new TOU period. With these SCE rates currently at a 99% confirmed, we're going to go forward assuming that these are the rates that are going to be implemented. We've built them in Energy Toolbase as final decision rates. This is to differentiate them from earlier proposed versions of these rates, as they have gone through some changes since then. If you're an Energy Toolbase user and you don't see the final decision rates available, just let your account manager know, and our team will get them activated in your account so you can start modeling with them. One thing we really like to talk about here is our accuracy. A lot of our users have been modeling with these proposed rates for quite some time since they've came about, and there's really just not an excuse as to why you're not, especially if you're modeling in these territories with the bigger rate changes coming. So modeling with these proposed rates protects your reputation as an installer or a developer. It solidifies your accuracy and future-proofs your projects against these kinds of rate changes, as well as policy or market changes. So you can ask yourself, why would you be modeling your projects with rates that aren't even going to be in effect in the coming year? It just makes sense to get ahead of the game now. A lot of our users are right now. So with all of that said, now I'm going to pass things to Aaron, who's going to get into the meat of these new rates. Aaron.
Thanks so much, Tracy. Good afternoon, everyone. Actually, good morning, since I'm sure most of you are tuning in from the West Coast. Thank you all for joining us on this webinar today. We have received a lot of emails lately with questions pertaining to these final decision rates, and I'm hoping this webinar will help answer many of those questions. But like Tracy mentioned, we will have a Q&A at the end, and we'll try to get to as many questions as we can. If we're unable to answer your question, please feel free to reach out to us via email after the webinar. Before we jump in, I'd like to take a quick moment to shout out to the California Solar and Storage Association. Most of the documentation we have, including many of the awesome charts you'll see throughout this PowerPoint, are provided by them. They have proven time and time again to be immensely helpful, especially Brad and Scott, who I've been bombarding with questions lately. We all know that this will not be the last time the California IOUs propose rates, so if you'd like to stay on top of those changes and be one of the first to get notified, I highly suggest you consider becoming a member. All right, let's go ahead and get started. Many of you are already aware that one of the biggest changes occurring with these rates is the on-peak period shifting to 4 to 9 p.m. As you can see, for weekdays during the summer season, the on-peak period shifts from 12 to 6 p.m. to 4 to 9 p.m., and all remaining hours will be assessed the off-peak charge. Weekends during the summer season will now have a mid-peak period from 4 to 9 p.m. as well. This next slide contains the same charts, but for the winter season. Biggest change here is the incorporation of a super off-peak period ranging from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. This super off-peak period will apply to both weekdays and weekends during the winter season, in addition to the mid-peak period from 4 to 9 p.m. The greatest effect this shift in time periods will have on solar is the fact that the highest production is likely to occur during the off and super off-peak time periods. Since these time periods have the lowest energy charges, customers will be receiving less when it comes to generation credits. When looking at grandfathering protections for commercial customers, the ship has already sailed as far as being able to qualify. Initial interconnection applications must have been submitted by December 31st, 2017 for public sector customers, and by January 31st, 2017 for private sector customers. Many of you are probably aware by now that option R will be replaced by option E come March. If your client is eligible for grandfathering, they can still elect service under option R even if they're not installed before option R hits its cap. For commercial customers, the grandfathering protection will last for a period of 10 years from the date the initial permission to operate was issued, but not to continue past July 31st, 2027 for non-public agencies and December 31st, 2027 for public agencies. As far as residential customers go, there's still some time to qualify. NEM 1 customers who choose to be on a time of use rate before the new time of use periods are implemented, and NEM 2 customers who install before the new time of use periods are implemented will be eligible for that grandfathering protection. Keep in mind that the grandfathering protection only pertains to the time of use periods. Customers will be subject to any changes in charges or rate structure. Residential customers can receive grandfathering protection for a period of 5 years from the date the initial permission to operate was issued, but not to continue past July 31st, 2022. It's estimated that starting October 2020, non-grandfathered residential customers will be transitioned to either TOUD 4 to 9 p.m. rate or the TOUD 5 to 8 p.m. rate. On this next slide, you'll see that rates TOUD-A, TOUD-T, TOUD-B, and TOU-EV1 will be closed to new customers upon implementation of the new rates. Grandfathered customers are eligible to remain on these rates until their grandfathering period ends. Customers who are not grandfathered will be transitioned to another time of use rate beginning Q4 of 2020. The final decision version of these rates within Energy Toolbase reflect the new charges that will be implemented in March, along with the currently effective time of use periods. TOUD-A and TOUD-B have an on-peak period of 2 to 8 p.m. Monday through Friday for both winter and summer. For TOUD-T, the on-peak period is weekdays noon to 6 p.m. for both seasons, and for TOU-EV1, the on-peak period is noon to 9 p.m. every day all year long. The currently effective TOUD rates with the option of having a 4 to 9 p.m. or 5 to 8 p.m. peak will still be in effect and available to new customers. The structure of these rates is not changing, but when looking at the chart on this slide, you'll see that the differential between the on and off peak charges is pretty significant, much greater than the residential rates we're seeing for San Diego Gas and Electric and Pacific Gas and Electric. In addition to these rates, SCE will be offering an optional rate called TOU Prime. This rate is intended for customers with high usage or customers that have electric vehicles, behind-the-meter storage systems, electric heat pump systems, or space heating. The availability of this rate will be concurrent with the closing of the rate schedules listed on the previous slide, which again is estimated to take place sometime this March. SCE updated their rates this month. This is a comparison of how TOUD option 4 to 9 p.m. effective January 1st, 2019 looks in Energy Toolbase compared to the final decision rate on the right that will go into effect in March. With a tiered baseline credit and time-related charges, this rate schedule showcases one of the many complex tier structures our platform can model. I'm thinking the reason SCE released an update this month is to get the rates closer to what they'll be come March. As you can see, there isn't too much variance among the charges shown on this slide. The rates shown on this slide are for a customer in Region 14 receiving basic service. The baseline amounts are scheduled to change come March 2, so depending on region, service type, and season, customers will either see an increase or decrease in the amount of kilowatt hours eligible for that baseline credit. Although a majority of our customers are primarily concerned with the residential or commercial rates, I'd like to take a few minutes to briefly go over the agricultural rates. There are two rates, TOU PA2 and TOU PA3, both offering the option of having a 4 to 9 p.m. or 5 to 8 p.m. on-peak window. The charts on this slide pertain to TOU PA3 option E with the 5 to 8 p.m. peak window. As you can see highlighted in red, the on-peak charge of 47.9 cents per kilowatt hour will be assessed Monday through Friday during the summer season. Currently, the on-peak period for these rates is weekdays from noon to 6 p.m. during the summer season. Similar to the commercial rates, the current option A will be replaced by option E, and the current option B will be replaced by option D. Options A and B will still be available to grandfathered customers. As you can see within this chart, option E has a much higher summer on-peak energy charge, but does not have any peak demand charges. Option D is opposite in the sense that the summer on-peak energy charge is lower, but both summer and winter have a peak demand charge. For small commercial customers, there are three options, E and D, which replace the current A, R, and B options, and option ES, which is intended for behind-the-meter storage customers. As you can see on this slide, options E and ES do not have demand charges, which typically makes the rates more favorable for solar. The summer on-peak energy charge for these rates is pretty significant though, especially option ES, which has a charge of almost 55 cents per kilowatt hour. In contrast, option D does have demand charges, but you'll notice that the energy charges are much, much lower. For option ES, there will be a 15,000 participant cap. Customers looking to participate must have a minimum storage capacity equal to the greater of either 4.8 kilowatt hours or at least 0.05% of the customer's annual usage over the previous 12 months. Like mentioned, small commercial customers under the current option A will be transitioned to option E come March. Option E will be the default for TOU GS1. As you can see, this will be quite the shift for some customers, with the on-peak charge increasing by almost 68%. That would normally be a good thing for solar customers as far as generation credits go, but since the on-peak time period will be switching from noon to 6 p.m. to 4 to 9 p.m., this change will not be as beneficial. You're probably aware by now that these rates aren't the most solar friendly. More than ever, storage is going to play a huge role when it comes to avoiding those very high peak charges. Scott will be diving into that concept here shortly when looking at a commercial case study. For the large commercial customers, there are three main rate schedules, TOU GS2, TOU GS3, and TOU 8. Currently, the applicability for these rates deals with the customer's monthly max demand, 20 to 200 kW for GS2, 200 to 500 kW for GS3, and any customers with a max demand exceeding 500 kilowatts would be under TOU 8. Currently, these rates offer options A, B, and R. Again, those options are being replaced with options D and E. D will be the option customers are defaulted to. This option has much higher demand charges than option E, but the energy charges are significantly lower. Also note that the mid-peak demand charge for option D will be moving from summer, which the current option B rate has, to winter. I already mentioned this before, but since I've recently had a few customers ask if there's any way their clients can still receive service under option R, I figured I'd reiterate this point. Although we're past the deadline for commercial customers to qualify for grandfathering, customers that are in fact already eligible can still choose to receive service under option R even if they are not installed before it hits its cap. Option E is similar to option R in the sense that it has a reduced max demand charge and that there is a participation cap. TOU 8 option E will have a cap based on interconnection agreement of 250 megawatts, and customers will be required to have solar, storage, or certain EV charging. For GS2 and GS3, option E will be uncapped. It's worth noting that now, with options E and D, there will no longer be a large commercial rate that does not have time-related demand charges. We can't stress this enough, but if you're not already doing so, we highly suggest you start incorporating storage within your solar proposals. Like previously mentioned, storage is going to be more important than ever when it comes to trying to avoid those extremely high peak charges. The visual on this next slide compares the current option R to the final decision option E for TOU 8. There's quite a bit of changes happening here. In addition to the on-peak period shift, there will now be a super off-peak period ranging from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. during the winter season. That means that after non-bypassable charges are subtracted, solar generating customers will only earn a credit of about 0.052 for any kilowatt hours produced during the day for the months of October through May. Years ago, before storage was the hype, Energy Toolbase implemented features that would allow our customers to incorporate the many aspects of storage into the avoided cost analysis of their projects. Since then, we have only expanded on those features. With that said, I'm going to go ahead and hand things off to Scott, who will be touching on some of those features.
Scott, you're all good.
All right, thank you so much, Aaron. That was phenomenal. Just to get going here, hello everyone. My name is Scott D'Ambrosio. My portion of this webinar is going to be dedicated in reviewing how these new charges, TOU shifts, and structures of these tariffs will affect the economics of your analysis. Before we move forward, I want to make the statement that these changes are going to affect all sectors: residential, commercial, ag customers, as well as municipalities. Now, there's no rule of thumb that you can draw or blanket statement you can make about all clients. Every client has a unique energy load profile, as well as their own individual considerations and assumptions that need to be taken into account. My goal here is to express how these structural changes will affect your avoided costs and financial metrics you are presenting to your customers, and how you can leverage Energy Toolbase to quickly, accurately run analysis to present to your clients the most realistic, achievable results. Before we review the analysis, I want to take a step back and present the assumptions I use. Now, there's endless numbers of combinations I could have used to model here. Now, due to time, I'm going to present two examples. I'm going to present one commercial and one residential, and hopefully you could see the analysis is changing and how valuable it is to stay ahead of the curve and start preparing today how you're going to model projects for the future. All right, so you guys are looking at a lead here in Energy Toolbase. A lead is that information right to the left. And then to the right there, you're going to notice facilities. And facilities typically represent meters here at Energy Toolbase. In this scenario, they are representing either current or future rates. So just as a foundation here, let's talk about what I used as our energy use profile. So under each facility, aka meters, we recreate your client's energy bill. We have multiple different ways of doing this. Now, I'm going to work left to right here. So just talking about monthly electric bills, these are hard bills you're collecting from your client, transferring within Energy Toolbase. Next, you're going to see is the ability to enter interval data, and we accept multiple different forms: multi-column, single column, XML, CSV, and then we have a direct integration with our friends at Utility API. So for today's purposes, I downloaded an XML file from SCE, and this is a medium commercial client. So we're importing that XML file, and we're going to reiterate a couple points Aaron made here. So we're reading that file right now. We're going to give it a profile name. I'm going to call this XML. You're going to see a drop down of all the utilities in our database. So I'm simply just going to choose Southern California Edison. You're going to see now under rate schedules. So we have two different ways these rates are inputted within our system. You'll see user-defined rates. These are custom rate schedules. Aaron was mentioning that we could drop in your account by request. These are the future ones. Then underneath here, you're going to see global rate schedules. So my first facility, I'm bringing in this XML data. I'm modeling a GS2 option B. You'll notice effective date here at Energy Toolbase referenced the last time there's been a tariff change. You can see 1/1/2019. One thing that makes Energy Toolbase unique is we have an in-house utility team making sure we have the most accurate, up-to-date rates in the market. So once we bring in that XML data, you can see we recreate your client's energy bill. To the right here, you can see we break down other charges, MBCs, energy charges, demand, for a monthly total as well as an annual total. One thing we love here at Energy Toolbase is transparency. So under rate schedule details, you'll actually see a breakdown. You can notice the seasons and time periods, fixed charges, energy charges, so on and so on. All right, so the first foundation was I'm using an XML data, and now let's go ahead and talk through other assumptions I made. So step one, general information assumptions I made here. It's an after-tax proposal. We're going to compare a client going from a current GS2 option B to a typical rate switch of a current option R. We're going to compare that to the way it's going to work in the future, which is your option D taking place of your B and switching to your option E taking place of the R. So we're going to compare a commercial example with those two rates and a solar and storage as well. So as we take a look, we got a commercial client, they're taxable. What is the federal and state tax rate I'm using? 21 and 8%, using a 3% escalation. Step two, just reiterating the points here. On 1 meter, we are going from the future D to the current E, to the future E. And then on my other one, we're going from a current B to a current R, both GS2, option B. The incentives I'm using for these assumptions here, just to kind of walk through. I'm using the 100% bonus depreciation. I'm using the federal ITC. I'm using state makers as well. Okay. Under the solar portion of our platform here, when you come here for the first time, Energy Toolbase gives you the option to bring in solar production data. We have a direct integration with our friends at Helioscope, but we're also interoperable for anybody who you might be using within the market. Just bring us that 8760 data. For this example today, I am using PV watts. In PV watts, just so you know, I'm using a consistent system size at 120 kW, $2.50 a watt. All right, so let's kind of just talk about, we're going to take a look at the effects, but I just want to talk about so you have an understanding why things are changing, right? I know Aaron just mentioned different charges, different TOU periods. I'm under our ETB analytics here, under demand profile visualization. Okay, this is where we have the ability to take a look visually at 365 days how your client is using energy. So I'm going to zoom into a 2-day period. I'm going to go ahead and just take demand cost out of this for a second. And just to kind of recap everybody, you're looking at that interval data set I brought in. On the bottom of the screen, this is a 15-minute breakdown. You'll see a timestamp. And what we do in the back end is we overlay solar production data to calculate your net profile. Now, really, the point that I'm trying to make here, this is a current rate schedule, option B to the current R, right? And notice what happens when solar is really kicking. Notice this time period. Let me take away the B for a second. So look at the option R. As you hover your mouse over, once you get to that on-peak period, right, look, you're producing a lot of solar at this time. Look at what the value is. It's 39 cents minus your MBCs because you're exporting energy. So at this time, you're cranking, you're exporting all this extra credit at a high value. You're banking all this high credit. Well, look what happens now when you switch the time periods. I'm going to go to the same exact day and period. Okay, let me just take out everything and just clean it up again. Now you're comparing the future D to the future E. Okay, and notice the same day, right? When we go to 1 o'clock, look what happens. You're exporting the same amount, but your value here is 10 cents and change minus your MBCs, right? That's a lot different than 39 cents. And notice the on-peak period later in the day is as that solar is kind of cooling down a little bit. So visually, I hope you can see why this is changing your economics. All right, so that's our data visualization. All right, transactions on these assumptions. I just used 3 different transactions: a cash purchase, a PACE loan, and a PPA. Now let's go ahead and take a look at the output. Okay, I rendered a document here just to catch everybody up to speed. You're looking on the screen here is your before bill, right? And we're comparing, once again, the new D rate to the current B rate using the same interval data set. The client would have been paying $36,832. On the current rate today, a little bit more, $37,876. Okay, now what happens on your post analysis? All right, so when we take a look here, first thing is option D to option E. This is a simulation of your client's post-project bill. Notice here the avoided cost at $23,148. If they were using today's current rate, you would see the savings around $26,089. Right, there is an erosion of savings of slightly over 11% with these new TOU periods. Year 1 savings affects every part of our financial metrics. So you'll notice the 30-year savings is different. I have a worse payback, I have a worse net present value, and a worse internal rate of return. So as Aaron was mentioning, right, isn't the most solar-friendly opportunity here, but this opens the door for storage analysis. So let's just talk about what happens if we put storage on the same exact project. All parameters the same. The only difference here is I'm adding storage. So when you took a look at Energy Toolbase's storage portion of our platform, when you go through step 5, we have multiple different ways to run a storage performance. To the right there, you're going to see grayed out. You'll see SunPower. So at Energy Toolbase, we do have integrated partners. The difference between an integrated partner and going through Energy Toolbase's door, an integrated partner is a simpler experience for our user base. The integrated partner, we put them through heavy validation. So what they're doing is presetting and pre-validating the inputs in Energy Toolbase to give you the most realistic, achievable results. When you go through Energy Toolbase's door, we give you all these different levers that affect your battery behavior. So I'm using Energy Toolbase's simulation here. Just so you know, I am stacking strategy. So I'm doing peak demand shaping in conjunction with time arbitrage. I'm charging from solar. I'm using a 50 kW and 100 kWh. All right, let's look what happens. Same parameters, same before bill. Now look at the effects when I add storage into this mix. Okay, so going from a D to an E, my avoided cost jumps up to $27,761. On the same scenario, from the current B to R, look what happens. Yes, savings jump up $28,428. Now the delta between these two has now shrunk from 11.5% down to 2.5%. So we were able to mitigate the gap of the erosion of savings here, which in turns increases all our financial ratios. So storage in this example here is extremely helpful. Now we're going to go ahead, I'm going to show you a residential example here shortly, and then we're going to compare some of the financial ratios at the end. So back to this screen here where we're recreating our client's energy bill. Just want to go ahead and just talk to everybody about the parameters I use for the residential assumptions. So as we go through here, in this example, I'm using monthly electric bills this time just to do something a little bit different. I'm using the current D rate schedule. I'm using monthly electric bills, and I just put a blanket. They're going to use 1,500 kilowatt hours. And Energy Toolbase, we actually convert this into interval data for you by using our ETB load profiler. So we actually take your monthly data, convert it to interval data by tapping into the Department of Energy OpenEI that collect interval data sets based on geographic location. So the shape of the curve for this client looks like this. All right, so let's go ahead and just talk about other assumptions I made for this analysis. So step 1, this is going to be a before tax proposal. It's going to be a residential client. In step 2, just so you know what we're comparing the current D rate in this example to the current TOU D rate. On our other facility, we're using the future D rate to the future TOU D rates. Okay, everything else consistent within incentives. Step 4 in here, just so everybody understands, I'm using PV watts again. In this assumption here, I'm using a 10 kW. Tilt angle is 10, 180. All right, same transactions, cash, loan, and a PPA. Now let's take a look at the output here. So this is the before bill, okay? Slight little difference. This is the current D rate to the future D rate. Your actual cost slightly goes down a little bit. But look what happens to your avoided costs. Okay, so we are a current D rate to the future DTOU. We have a avoided cost year 1 at $39,036. Look at the future rate. The erosion of savings here is huge. it is 37%. So the year one of savings now is not 39.36, it's 24.78. And you can see how that affects all my financial ratios. So instead of a 5.6-year payback, it is a 8.7-year payback. So once again, on the commercial analysis, what happens if we add storage on here? So that's our next scenario. So just kind of talk through, the only difference I made in this scenario was I am using a future rate switch from a current D in this scenario, and I'm going to go ahead and use the prime rate, right? So this is a new prime rate, is very beneficial in the analysis for storage on the residential front. Just so you understand the parameters I'm using for storage in here, we are using a 5 kW with a 13.5 kWh. Our control setting in this example, we are just utilizing time arbitrage. Okay, let's go ahead and take a look at the output here. What happens when we have storage? So just to recap, the same before bill for everybody. And look at the post-project bill. All right, from the current D to the new DOU, to the current DTOU. Right, savings 39.62. Well, look what happens when we add storage on here. Once again, we're able to mitigate that gap from 37% erosion of savings just down to 14% the erosion of savings. Right, so this is extremely beneficial in this scenario as well. All right, just to kind of recap the analysis, got a couple slides together. Hold on one second. All right, let me just slide this over really quick. All right, so what are we seeing on these slides? So we're looking at the solar analysis in here, right? We just put some metrics side by side here. So on our commercial to residential solar only, right? With the new rate schedules, commercially, you're seeing erosion of savings. Oh, sorry, let me go back. All right, you're seeing an erosion of savings at 11%, right? You're seeing a decrease in 30-year electric bill savings, you're seeing an increase in payback, and you're also seeing an increase in net present value and internal rate of return. Residentially, you're seeing a huge delta of the difference. You're seeing a 37% erosion of savings. Okay, so what happens on our next slide here? So now this is saying, hey, what happens when you add storage into the mix? So when you take a look at the original analysis, from our commercial client, from the B to the R, when we add storage to the table, we increase savings about 9%. 30-year electric bill savings increasing by 6.4%. The payback is slightly going down a little bit, and then you'll see net present values increasing. But what happens when we use future rates and we add storage? We're bumping the annual savings by 20%, the 30-year electric bill savings, the payback is slightly a little bit better, and a huge bump in net present value. All right, on the last slide here, you're going to see the current rates to the future rates on the residential side. So what happens when we add storage to those analysis? So going from the current D to the current DTOU, there was a slight little increase. It's pretty much a wash on the current rates. When you start adding storage, when you look at the future rates, look at the huge difference here in the economics. Extremely beneficial on the storage front. All right, so I know that went quick. Unfortunately, there's only so much time on this webinar. My goal of this webinar was to express how the environment you're currently operating in is changing. I think we can all agree the industry is not getting simpler, it's only getting more complex. Today we're talking about Southern California Edison future rates and the effects of the economics. Soon we're going to be talking about the effects of NEM 3.0, followed by the next policy change after that. The industry is evolving. The question I have for you is, in your business and in your company, are you evolving? What are you using today to model future savings and present accurate results to your customer? Honesty, integrity, and accuracy equals longevity in this business. To our current customers on the line, I just want to say thank you. We appreciate your business. Thank you for the opportunity to work with you. As a current user of our platform, we do offer ongoing education that you could simply sign up for on your dashboard when you log in, and we do different subjects: storage training, advanced training, financing training, new user trainings. So, and also don't be shy. You all have a dedicated account manager. Please feel free to reach out to them. Their job is to make you successful in our platform. To the non-ETB users on the line, I hope we demonstrated Energy Toolbase's precision and flexibility. I would like to invite you to start a free trial so you could see firsthand our features and capabilities. To access that free trial, just simply go to energytoolbase.com. When you start that free trial, there's a little referral box. If you type in webinar there, I'll go ahead and extend the typical 14-day free trial to 30 days just as a thank you. Understand everybody's busy, so we really appreciate your time. All right, going to pass it back to Mr. Adam Gerza now.
Cool. Thank you, Scott. Awesome, awesome job. I was seeing a lot of that for the first time myself, and that's really fantastic analysis. Hey, everyone, this is Adam Gerza. I just wanted to add a couple quick big picture comments onto the back of this webinar. The SCE territory is very near and dear to my heart. I've been selling solar projects in SCE going back over 10 years, and I live in the SCE territory today. So I kind of want to get left out on this one. I wanted to share that, I've pretty closely watched rate changes in the SCE territory over the last 10 years and the evolution both on the residential and commercial side. And I think pretty much everybody who took the time to get on this webinar already knows that we're always seeing rate changes implemented to pretty much all three of the IOU rates throughout the year. It's fair to say they're pretty much in a constant state of flux. But these rate design changes that we're talking about on the webinar today are really different. And, in my opinion, in 10 years of doing this, these are the most significant changes we've seen. And, not trying to be dramatic here, but, these radical changes are, as Scott just pointed out pretty clearly in numbers, going to have pretty significant effects on the economics of solar and or storage projects. And again, the chart on the right, everybody's seen this. Scott just demoed it across a couple of case studies. Later evening on peaks, the value of solar gets eroded. That's kind of the short and long of it there. So, one of the comments I wanted to make is that now that we are pretty much on the brink of implementation here, we're less than a couple months away, as Aaron just laid out, from these voluntary schedules going into effect. It's just as critical as ever that solar companies and solar salespeople are, number one, aware of these changes, and you're on this webinar today, so you've checked that box. And then number two, you're modeling and presenting analysis to customers based on these new rate designs. And I think, certainly CalSA and Brad Hevner especially have been pretty consistent on that message and that, public service announcement over the last year, now that these final decision rates are right on the brink of implementation. Now, kind of last thing I wanted to say is, how you as a company choose to communicate all this to your customer is obviously up to you. We're putting a lot of information at you today. And as Scott just mentioned, and he nailed it, this stuff does further complicate the sale process. We can just kind of call it what it is. It's certainly not making things cleaner and simpler. So the bottom line is that this is happening, and this is in some ways a new challenge for companies out there selling solar and storage in the SCE territory. But the good companies will turn this into an opportunity and use it to your advantage. And again, that's basically being really well versed on these changes. This deck here and a lot of that summary content that Aaron had summarized is available to Energy Toolbase users. And then I think one of the just bigger things is, explaining to customers that this really is the new normal. 1 year from now, I think in January 2020, this is, it's just going to be all of our reality. And again, that's later evening on peaks. That's more dynamic rates. I think especially for SCE, that's more optionality on rates. Probably even more so than the SDG&E and PG&E changes. Lots of optionality of rate schedules where you can put your customer post-solar or post-storage, especially on the residential side there. And then as everyone's already mentioned, obviously energy storage is going to come into the conversation more, as Scott just demoed, to kind of help hedge against these changes. So my very last thought before passing it back to Tracy for Q&A, and this is just kind of reiterating what Scott just said, but I think it's maybe the most important thing that I'm going to say, is that these case studies that Scott just did are for one particular customer with a particular load profile. So I think the question that we get a lot right now is, what are the effects of these new rates going to be on my customer? And you need to be careful about drawing generalized conclusions when you run some analysis. And basically what I'm saying here is you really need to run this analysis on a project-specific basis. One thing that I found over the last, let's say, 6 months, because I've been doing a lot of modeling across all 3 of the IOU territories with some of these final decision rates, is that I've seen a lot of variance, right? There's certainly cases where customers are going to get negatively affected much more so than others. And again, this is just kind of driving home the point that to really do the highest level of due diligence for your customer, you got to run project-specific analysis. And as you already know, that is what Energy Toolbase and our software application really, really specializes in. So that's all I got, Tracy. I'm going to pass it back to you, and thanks for having me on.
All right, cool. We got quite a few questions in. We're going to go through as many as we can. We don't have a ton of time, but I have collected some. So this is one we get a lot. This is, what's the difference between a proposed and a final decision rates in our Energy Toolbase accounts? I'll probably pass that one to Erin.
So as we already mentioned, when the big IOUs release these proposed rates, there's several changes that take place before a final decision is released. So in Energy Toolbase, a lot of the time you'll see rates say proposed and then eventually final decision. Just because those changes, it could be time period related, charges, structure of the rate. So we'll initially put in rates titled proposed or proposed decision or some variance of that. And then once the final decision is released, we will update the rates, create new rates, and title and final decision. So as of now, our customers should definitely be using the rates titled final decision.
So we get this one. What if I don't have all the XML data to put into the platform? Are there any other options? Scott, I'm going to throw that one to you.
All right, thank you for unmuting me. So the question was, what happens if you don't have XML data? Is there other options? Yes, there's absolutely other options. So we do accept interval data in multiple different forms: XML, CSV, multi-column, single column. We do have a partnership with Utility API where you can directly import data, but if you have monthly electric bills, we will convert that into interval data for you. I'll be the first one to say getting actual interval data is going to be the most accurate way, but when you can't, using our ETB load profile, converting interval data is going to be your next best option.
Scott, you can stay unmuted for this one too. Is there a tool in Energy Toolbase that helps me understand our demand usage and our solar production and how we're exporting between these rate schedules?
Yes, great question. We have multiple different tools within our platform to help you assess that. One of the features we do have is our demand profile visualization, where literally for every 15 minutes of the day, you can visually understand and see how your client's using energy. We also have optimizers within our solar and storage steps, where you can optimize off mitigating exports or maybe optimize off reducing demand. So numerous different ways within our platform.
All right, I'm going to address this one to Erin because we've had it about 5 times. How do we get these rates into our account? And kind of in conjunction, once these rates become voluntary in March, are they going to be in everybody's account?
So if you're looking to use these rates currently, right now, before they go into effect come March, you can simply reach out to myself. My email should be on the screen right now, or reach out to your account manager. Make sure to specify whether you need residential rates, commercial, ag, all, or just specific rate schedules, because we don't want to overload your account if you don't plan on using all the rates. But just a simple email, and we'd be happy to add those for you. But like mentioned, these rates will go into effect come March, and commercial customers will be transitioned to these new rates and time periods come March.
All right, let's see. When we're proposing a project, does Energy Toolbase let us determine the better rate schedule that a customer will get better savings on after installing systems, for example, between the new rates coming out and the old rates. So probably Scott, I'll unmute you for that one.
Thank you, Tracy. So Energy Toolbase, you definitely have the capabilities to compare two different rate schedules in step 2 is, I kind of briefly went over, is where you can compare a current rate to a possible new rate, but you as the user are responsible for choosing that rate there. But we also allow you to create versions of a proposal so you can compare multiple different scenarios and combinations to really end at what is the appropriate proposal to present to your client. And I mentioned the optimizers before, and the optimizer takes all those into considerations when you're using it.
All right, Scott, so we talked a lot about energy storage being a big factor when these rates go into effect. Is it going to be able to offset the fact, again, that these rates are not solar friendly, and how do we go about determining if that's going to be a better solution?
So, to kind of reiterate what Adam said, and I said this at the beginning of my part, was every single client you have deserves their own individual considerations. You need to understand that it is an individual energy use profile. So per project, you need to be modeling what is the correct move for your client, right? So there's no blanket statement that says storage is better for everybody. You need to do that analysis. And that's one of the powers of Energy Toolbase, is where you can create beautiful, accurate proposals in no time. And you create versions in under 1 minute. So I definitely recommend, if you're interested in learning more about storage, we have storage webinars we constantly put on, and then we can help you compare that analysis within your own account.
This is a little bit, we're going to do a couple more. This is a little bit more in depth. For Aaron, is the TOU 8 option E requirement based on a percentage offset like option R?
So what I've seen thus far regarding option E for TOU 8, there is going to be eligibility requirements similar to option R. The system must have a net renewable generating capacity equal to or greater than 15% of the customer's annual peak demand. And that percentage is increased to 20% if it's a standalone storage. But like mentioned, if that doesn't answer your question, there are several components to the eligibility for option E for TOU 8. So feel free to shoot me an email. And I'd be happy to look into that a little further for you.
All right, last one we're going to get to. Everybody's asking, are we going to send out the slide deck? I know it's a great, awesome resource for you guys. So Scott, I think I'll throw that one to you.
All right, so everybody is going to be sent a copy of the webinar, but the slides are only going to be available for Energy Toolbase users. So all you have to do is just contact your dedicated account manager, request the slides. We'll be happy to send them to you. And if you're a non-ETB user, this is a great opportunity to start a free trial. We'd be happy to send it to you, but we look forward to the opportunity to earn your business.
All right, we're going to stop there with questions. We don't want to keep you too long. We're coming to the top of the hour. Again, I'm going to try to respond to all of your questions via email within the next few days. Again, if you're an ETB user and you do have questions about certain rates affecting certain projects, just get with your account manager and they're going to help you with that. And we're going to send this recording out to everybody. So just want to say thank you to everybody joining us. If you want to explore a little more about what we have to offer, we're doing that 30 days for free. So just sign up and we would love to have you. Hope you guys have a great day and Happy New Year again.